again. I'm here with Vivek Mahbubani.
Oh, hey guys, Vivek Mahbubani. If you haven't followed me yet, Facebook at Funny Vivek, letter M for Mama.
You check me out. I'm at Andy Curtin on Instagram, all that jazz, Twitter, Facebook. And we have a very special guest today, Jules Hannaford. How are you?
Hi guys, it's a pleasure to be here.
Where do people
so
find you
excited.
online?
So people can find me at Jules Hannaford on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.
So you're a bit of a legend podcaster in this city. Jules has got two podcasts. The first one is Fool Me Twice, which is about a catfishing horrific story that you went through, an online dating scam, and also Hong Kong Confidential. Oh, and then you wrote a book, Fool Me Twice, same name, and then Hong Kong Confidential, which is your podcast interviewing interesting people around the city, would you say?
That's right.
So we're going to talk about today. We'll talk about where is catfishing now? What's your involvement been in that since you've finished with the podcast and the book? And you're coming up with an addition to Fool Me Twice, right?
Yeah, Fool Me Twice 2 is coming out later in the year. We've just got started on it. It's very exciting and it's about a diamond scam.
And then Hong Kong Confidential, we're going to find out today what you've learnt about it, all the different people you've met and how it's changed the way you look at Hong Kong.
Yeah, normally Jules is the one who interviews. We're flipping it over. We're doing Hong Kong Confidential, interviewing her.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I like had the shoe on the other foot.
So you started writing the book Fool Me Twice. That was kind of the initial step in towards podcasting, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, it was. Actually, that's a really good question. No, I think I started Hong Kong Confidential first. I did. So what happened was I went to life coaching. I realised that I was becoming a reality television addict and I wasn't doing anything rather than just teaching full time.
Without your own reality?
Yeah. Sitting at home watching Survivor, wishing I was there, starving and not sleeping. And so
Takes a trip to Llama Island. Leave me alone.
Oh, yeah, trying to get Survivor going down on Power Station Beats, but no one would join me. And I realised that I needed to do something a bit more creative with my life. And I was in menopause as well, so I wasn't sleeping well and I was, kind of really stressed. And so I went to life
We can
coaching.
relate to that.
Yeah. I had menopause yesterday. No, I'm just kidding. No.
I think it goes longer than a day.
That wasn't right. I was a paused man. That's what I was.
And so I went to life coaching and then decided I was going to do Hong Kong Confidential. Because of menopause, I wasn't sleeping. So I was listening to podcasts every day, and I still do. Every single day I listen to podcasts.
Did you see yourself as being a creative person in general?
Well, yeah, I did a good degree in communications, majoring in media. So I kind of have a bit of a background in this. And I'm a teacher and I taught drama for 15 years. And so, yes, I see myself as a creative person for sure. I do painting and things like that too. So I just decided I was going to get started and create a podcast. So I did an online course with Udemy, and then I learned how to edit on YouTube.
Vivek is reacting with
Udemy.
disdain.
Udemy.com. That's actually where I watch a lot of tutorials as well. And
Do you really?
Yeah.
I'm fascinated how you find
I
stuff.
used to be a big lynda.com fan and watched videos over there. Then Udemy was cheaper, so I was like, I go with the price.
Yeah,
so I went there.
$8 Australian for my podcast course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually basically a very simple site. I'm not trying to sell them or anything, but it's a simple site. They teach a lot of different techniques and different skill sets, software, hardware, all that stuff. And yeah, that's a great starting point.
It was. So I did the course and then I learned how to edit on YouTube in Audacity, and then I'm ready to go. Put something out on Hong Kong Mums.
It's remarkably
Yes.
easy when you figure out the nuts and bolts of it, right?
I did it really fast, but I am typically someone who does everything quickly. So then I got into
Very Hong
Kong
Konger of you,
Confidential, yeah. And then after that, I decided to write the book along the way. I met a woman.
So it was the other way around. The podcast kind of initiated the book.
I had a guest called Pashmina on my podcast, and she had a book agency, and so she convinced me to join her, and she supported me through the writing of the book, and it came about that way. And
So
then
would you
after
say
the book, the podcast of Fool Me Twice.
So it sounds like a lot of stuff that you've done has been like kind of go with the flow, as in I met this person said this, I saw an opportunity and I went for it.
Yeah,
Vivek's just learning about how life works.
Yeah, I know. You're so young, Vivek.
I know. I had menopause yesterday, remember?
So you talked to one person and then that had caused a conversation with another person? What is this?
Yeah.
I haven't learned the life lesson on Udemy.com yet. I'll get there. So
How to Interact with Humans by Udemy.com.
No, it's
sponsor of this podcast.
No, I'm doing the one before that, How to Human. That's it. I haven't even done that yet.
So what really struck me, because I've been ripping through the Fool Me Twice podcast, so was your daughter did she initiate that? That was her project? Or?
No, it was my project.
That you did together?
Yeah, we did it together. I got her on board and asked her to write it because after finishing the book, I was like, that's it. I don't want to write anymore.
It must have been an intense process to go through.
Very hard, very stressful. And of course, I'm bearing my soul about my foolish mistakes with online dating scams.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's very intense. So it was quite, on one hand, it was cathartic. On the other hand, it was anxiety inducing. I had a really short deadline, which was probably stupid because I was a full-time teacher at the same time and running Hong Kong Confidential alongside of it, a weekly show. So I think that all of that was quite stressful. So I'm like, no, I don't want to write. I love podcasting. I want to be a podcaster and a teacher, not a writer. My daughter is a writer. She's got a master's in writing for performance and publications. And she did the final edit on my book as well. So she knew the story. So I'm like, turn this into a podcast.
What about the people around you when you first started podcasting? Because like generally when I tell people, hey, I'm going to start a podcast or I have a podcast with Andy, the first thing they say is like, please don't. There's enough.
There's an
Nobody
ad
says that to me.
There's an ad that ABC TV just put out saying, don't make a podcast. For F's sake, don't make a podcast. Because in COVID, everybody's making a podcast.
College Humor or someone did a sketch about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, people discouraging you from adding yet another podcast that they have to now download and
But if I was
to.
taking good life advice, I mean, I wouldn't be here on several levels. Yeah.
Amazon sold out of microphones, apparently.
That's so funny.
Sold out. So,
but I mean, listening to it because my exposure to podcasting is actually it's the first serial podcast I've ever listened to.
Oh, I love serials. I love them.
Yeah, well, it's made me want to go and listen to Serial. You know, kind of one of the big ones.
Yeah, that's the biggest and the best.
And it's such a different style, but I have to admit, like it was. You really are opening up some pretty personal stuff on there. Like I hate to say it, like it's such a cliche to be like, oh, it's so brave, but I was really like, wow, this is an intense thing to hear about. And there was another lady that you had on there, I think only briefly, just giving her sort of other catfish story, and she was just like, oh yeah, no, I thought it'd be a good idea to loan some money and everything, and I thought, oh man, you can see how people go through this stuff, but I feel like you just rarely ever get someone being so candid about how they ended up in that situation.
Well,
is that fair as a listener?
Look, it's $1 billion industry, dating scams. It's massive and it's getting exponentially larger since COVID hit and people are getting scammed left, right and centre.
Are you pretty across that now post having put the book out there? Like
what, past the shame?
No, I just like... Now that you've written, you seem to be still up to date with what's going on.
Oh, yeah, because I'm actually getting asked to talk about it now. I'm getting speaking engagements. I'm having people contact me. I'm running seminars. So I'm becoming a little bit of a romance scam expert in Asia.
The reverse scam.
Yeah. So... yes,
that's going on someone's CV.
Yeah.
There's a scam. I'll find out. If it's romantic, I'll know definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check with Jules.
Yeah.
I think that I am still on it and I am helping people and I really hope that my story helps other people not to get caught in the same trap that I was. And at the same time, really, I went through the shame with the book and that's where I had to get my organisation on board and my principal and my parents and all these people that didn't know about it and get their support because my job's most important to me as a teacher. And I was worried about my reputation because I was so foolish and I just got taken for a ride and could have lost my life.
And were those concerns realised on any level?
No, everyone was incredibly supportive and fantastic.
Isn't that insane?
Like, it was amazing.
You create this wall of consequence that are just not real at all.
Absolutely. Everyone was so supportive. So I worked through the shame and the embarrassment and all of that writing the book. So by the time it came to doing the podcast, it was a different approach psychologically and the anxiety that I had writing the book had really sort of gone away a lot once I was doing the podcast. And I'm just so proud of what we created. And the fact that we got nominated for a Webby for Best Writing.
Good sign.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's such an honour.
But then would you say like the process of facing your issues through a podcast versus a book is so different? Because with a book, you can write a bit, let it digest, sit there, and then come back again to more. But podcasting, you kind of want to just go with it rather than like keep editing yourself constantly.
I think it was different because I did the book first, and that was very, very confronting because I was reliving it and worried about my career, and I was under a huge time pressure, which I'd put myself under, but that was a mistake. I'd made a too short a timeline. So I got very anxious, and that was very stressful. And also I didn't have the skill level that I would have liked to have had as a writer that I do as a podcaster. So my skill level, I think, is better as a podcaster. So in many ways, doing the podcast was much easier.
It's interesting that, because it's like, if you want to write a book, you have to have something important. So you write about the most important thing, but you're like, I need to do some less important things to write about, so that by the time I do my most important thing, I've nailed all of the skill sets required.
Well, in a way,
do you know what I mean?
In a way I did that in the book because I wrote about my childhood, and there's a bit about my life.
Yeah,
beforehand.
sure,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, so I did that, the build up as I wrote, and then it got to the harder stuff later on. But one thing I realised when I went back and I was editing the book, I was really able to see how Truman had manipulated me and how he was really professional. And I could see, because I'd kept all the Skype chat and all the emails and put some of them in the book. So when I was able to see that, I was able to forgive myself a bit and go, oh my gosh. So I could see how adept he was at manipulating me and what a professional criminal he was. So that was a good thing for me because it was quite cathartic, and I was able to.
Yeah, because if he's a pro, you can be like, well, I got duped by a pro. It's not like...
Yeah.
It's like I just walked into a wall or something. Someone was...
This guy had done his homework.
knows
he
what he's
prepared,
doing.
He was like at another level, and you're like, okay, fair enough. That means I'm not just naive. I was like, this is another pro level that I got scammed. So, okay, fair enough.
It's such a sinister thing. Are you familiar with Robert McKee? He wrote a book called Story. It's kind of like the Bible. He wrote it in the 80s or something. It's been translated in a million languages. It's the Bible for filmmakers and stuff in the US. It just sets out the principles of what makes a good story. And one of the things he was talking about was like evil hidden in goodness is sort of that double evil. So it's like, you know, the priest that molests children, it's so much worse because it's this figure of trust, you know, and this idea that like you've got this person that is sort of in your camp that is revealed to be something else is such a more sinister thing than like being robbed. Right?
Absolutely. And in fact, it turned out that he was a known criminal with over 20 aliases and a rap sheet back to the 1990s in the UK.
And you mentioned he had like some woman in Sweden or something on his Facebook. And
that's right. And she wouldn't come and visit him, and she only had a few friends, and it was just all very suspicious. But I kept ignoring all the red flags.
Yeah, but it's easy. Like, it's hindsight. It's like anything. When you review a situation and you go, well, I've done that differently.
Wake up.
That's
Australia.
like every show I do here. Every set we do, we kind of walk down like, I should have said that to that heckler. I should have done that.
Comedians are the worst.
Yeah,
I sit there and listen to the audio being like, wrong enunciation, wrong.
That's why I
Wrong
didn't do
pause.
well. Yeah, I mean, I guess like, so what you're saying is that your experience, because like you're facing your issues, there's just like comedians coming up on stage being vulnerable and being naked on stage, telling people how they feel. Just the difference is that our audience is not going to take us as seriously as maybe someone like you who's talking about it through a book or your podcast. Have you had people come up to you afterwards and say, oh, thank you so much. This has changed my mindset. It's made me see things better. I'm sure you must have a lot of those.
Absolutely. We've had emails from people all over the world and messages saying, thank you so much. I realised I was being scammed.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, if you were mid-scam, like you'd start noticing stuff really quickly.
Absolutely.
Listening to that.
A lot of people saying my mum went through the same thing and like wanting to connect with us. We get reviews and Facebook messages and emails and loads of feedback, and the feedback's been just overwhelmingly positive, apart from the ads. Everyone hates the ads. It's like, I'll stop reviewing the ads. That's how I make the money. Shut up.
Stop scamming us by saying this product is good. It's not.
They think
the ads aren't even that bad either.
No, I feel like people aren't listening to them. So we've got Valentina on there, who's a dating and relationship coach.
Yeah.
Like if I had her in my life, I wouldn't have been scammed.
They were relevant to the content
relevant.
matter.
It's
It wasn't like you're like stamps.com.
But everyone who's listening thinks I'm promoting online dating, so they don't get that they're not. Either I've done a bad job with the ads, or they don't get what it's about. So they think I'm
everyone sees
scamming people.
And one thing I've learned is you put something out there, everyone's going to perceive it through their own lens.
Exactly.
and find some
and
issue.
some people don't like the music or whatever, and that's fine. It's
I
real
love the
personal.
music. I was blown away by the
love
music.
the music. My sound designer, Shade Furlong in Brisbane, created every part of that music in
amazing.
that show for the show.
Well, so it was so different to what we do because we're a bit like, all right, play the music, go,
Yeah.
Whereas it really kind of set the mood.
Yeah,
the
the music is
fantastic.
fantastic.
It was almost. I'm not a film guy, but it sort of
filmic.
film
It was.
noir. Like you get in there and
that
it's
was the goal. Yeah.
it feels investigative, like some sort of a sleuth tale or something like that. I obviously really enjoyed it, but
then I mean, like, so you've been creating podcasting regularly. It's not like a hobby on the side now. So, like, for example, comedians, our challenge is new content all the time, right? That's the biggest challenge. But where do you get your ideas from? I'm sure, like, the scams are kind of reduced at least, or, you get another new issue that you're dealing with. Where is the ideas coming from? That's what I'm really curious about.
So we wanted to do Fool Me Twice 2, the next series. And
That's Fool Me
Did you-
4.
Yeah.
That's Fool Me 4
did you have
times.
to get scammed again for that?
No, well,
Mathematics.
a friend of mine who owns a diamond company in Hong Kong has come to me with a diamond scam, and the story is absolutely amazing. I'm so excited, and we're underway.
Oh, so this is already
Yeah,
going. Oh, there you go.
we're making Fool Me Twice 2. It'll be
perfect.
out, I guess, around November.
Hang on, just a quick word from our sponsor. Are you looking to buy a diamond?
And we're not going to say any more about that yet.
Yeah.
If you
But it's
follow,
really fantastic.
if you
I'm so
find the
excited.
diamond to be romantic, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So where should people stay tuned if they want to keep abreast of that coming out?
Oh, look, just subscribe on iTunes or wherever you are.
To the
or-
original one. So
yeah,
to go
yeah,
to
it's going on the
so
original
go to the feed of the original.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's going to be Fool Me Twice, same feed. I've still got 9,000 subscribers or whatever. So we'll just roll it out to the next group, and we've sort of put out that the season 2 is coming. So we're letting people slowly know that to make them aware.
So you're saying Fool Me Twice 2 is going to talk about diamond scams, as in like a diamond company scamming, or people scamming about fake diamonds? Do we get a little hint?
Isn't it
No.
both.
Honestly, I really don't want to say very
Alright,
much
fair
at
enough,
the
okay.
moment because it's such an amazing story, and
Yeah.
there's so many twists and turns and
Yeah,
so
don't
many
reveal.
unexpected aspects.
Yeah.
But it's about a diamond scam in Hong Kong.
I'm gonna guess that it's some guy playing poker, and it turns out it's like the Queen of Diamonds.
Oh my
and
God,
like,
you got it!
Oh, there we go.
I'm going to suggest the name Diamonds Aren't Forever.
Yeah, they realize that the expiration date is
Thanks,
like,
I'm jotting that down now.
they're not everyone's best friend. Ah, okay.
Oh, that's everybody. Yeah. Shifting. So obviously, Hong Kong Confidential is a wildly different project.
Yeah.
And what kind of fascinates me, because I did do a similar project of engaging interesting people in Shanghai, and what was the most interesting part for me was I became friends with a lot of these people and realized how many cool different things were going on in the city. How much do you feel it's changed your perception of Hong Kong? Because you've lived here for plenty of years before. Has it changed your understanding of the layers and the bubbles of the city?
I didn't realise how many incredible people there are in Hong Kong and the diversity here. And I think doing Hong Kong Confidential, I've got out 150 episodes already. It's just amazing the people that I've met. And I think that in a way, I kind of knew that Hong Kong was amazing, but it's really been wonderful to get down on the ground and meet these people and make friends with them and have all these connections and have other referrals. And the idea of Hong Kong Confidential was where I was going to help everybody and get these stories out there. But what I didn't realise was how inspired I would be. And I've been so inspired by all the people that I've met and the stories that I've heard and the raw sharing that I've experienced and the connection I've been able to make with my guests, which is incredible.
I was just thinking,
That's
like, some of
been
my
so
really close
rewarding.
friends now are people I
Yeah.
met doing the podcast.
I know, isn't that great?
Yeah.
And, you know, I just, like, when we were nominated for the Webby, I called on everyone to vote for me, and everyone stepped up and they're really happy to help. And I just have a lot of connections now and a lot of support, which
But what
is
about
wonderful.
like the reverse effect, as in like you thought this person was amazing, they come onto your show and you talk to them, and you're like, oh, okay, guess you're just not that special. I
had a couple of those.
You
I
had-
had one
yeah.
that was so bad that I said, "Oh, the audio didn't work,"
no, because like
that's a good point.
and he said, "I'm
We'll do it
available to
again."
do it again." I
Yeah.
said, "Schedule's really full.
Yeah.
I'll see if I find something."
I mean, like, I've been on some interview shows where people assume like I'm Indian. Oh, we're gonna get this
I was
guy.
about to say, I've been on some interview shows where the audio didn't work.
Yeah, I had this guy called Andy Curtin. He invited me, and I kept begging him to go back. No, I've been on shows, and they would have certain assumptions. For example, I remember I was on one of the radio shows here in Hong Kong, and they invited me on, and they were like, "All right, today we have this Indian guy. We're gonna learn some Indian phrases," and I'm like, I don't speak Hindi or Sindhi. What's going on? And then it was just really awkward because then they're just like, "Oh, the whole show is about language," and I'm like, "Well, we're in trouble now."
So are you asking Jules if she's a terrible interviewer? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm asking like, have you had where you have certain things, you've done whatever research or any information you have about them, you would assume, okay, someone who works with this, they should, be creative or this, and then they come up onto the show and you're like, wow, you are completely cold.
Do you know what I really think? That if I have a bad interview or if it doesn't go well, it's often my fault. And I think it's often related to the fact that I'm exhausted or I haven't slept well or I feel overworked. And I really don't feel like I blame my guests.
Oh, I'm happy to blame them.
I have had obviously some guests or stories that aren't perhaps as gripping or as intimate as others, but the thing is, you can't judge what the audience is going to like. Like I've put some
I
things
agree with
out
that.
where
Yeah.
I don't really think it's that great. And it's not something like if I got something on about dogs, I wouldn't really be that interested because I'm not a dog lover. Sorry, I'm going to get hate mail now. But you can put that out there and you'll get loads of listens. And so I've put stuff out that I thought was mediocre or it wasn't a great story and it's topped the charts.
I always find those are the ones where
don't know.
you put them out there and immediately some long-term fan is like, oh, that was my favourite.
Yeah,
You're like, what?
There's always an audience, I think,
It's
for what
terrible.
you're putting out.
That
And there's
feels
always somebody that's interested in your topic.
That's like literally every bit you do on stage here. You're like, this is going to kill. I'm going to go up there. No.
Yeah, you can't. You don't want to have expectations because then you'll be let down.
Yeah.
And I think, like you're saying about being a comedian earlier, like you get up and you're sort of getting raw and open on the stage and wanting to make people laugh. We're doing the same thing in podcasts as well. It's just in a different format, and it can be quite challenging or confronting, but I think you've got to just be proud of what you've created and not hang on too much about the outcome or people's responses. Just be grateful for what you've been able
And
to
the
put
process
together.
and what you get out of it as well,
Yeah,
right?
and the creativity and the joy that you get out of it and the reward that you get and that other people get from what you do.
The drastic difference, I think, is the feedback. Like stand-up, you are judged loudly
Now.
every 15 seconds.
Yes, and that would be hard to drop a great joke and not have anyone laughing. It must be very, very
I ask
hard.
Vivek. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I can tell you, I have a whole book about it. It's called Laugh at Me Once.
But don't you put a few stools in the audience or stool pigeons who will laugh for you?
I have my own
Like
sound
putting-
effects. This is why this room is designed this way. The speakers are there so I
For the
can
record,
hear the
I do not
laughter.
want it publicly stated that this room has sound effects in it. No, I'm kidding. The reality is that if you're doing a set, even a good set, you're going to miss a couple of them on the way. But if you're doing it properly, the audience doesn't realize that. But the irony is that there's a comfort in being in that much feedback that a lot of comics, when they think they can just do podcasts, are completely lost by the lack of feedback.
Yeah.
They can't
Yeah.
have no one there.
I think
you
that's
don't have
actually
the audience.
Yeah, that's actually why they're discouraging a lot of people starting new podcasts now, because like it's not as simple as you thought. I mean, it's one thing looking at an audience and speaking to them. It's another just looking into a wall and having a mic in your face and just saying talk.
Absolutely, and then it's another thing to have to interview on Zoom, which I've had to do through COVID, which is really hard. I don't like it at all. I can't wait to get back into person to person.
I did a show for the New York Comedy Club on Zoom, and it was okay, but it was like, oh, okay, this is what it is, you know. Certainly wasn't invigorating.
I think
you
when
don't
you
have the connection.
when you were doing that show, the mic probably didn't work. The audio probably was problematic.
You know what
was
was funny is the Ahmed was on it, not to name names, and started trying to do crowd work, which doesn't work on Zoom, and then just starts hitting on one of the girls who's just sitting in her living room trying to watch a show, and we're all there like, what is this horrific train wreck of a
That sounds like a
development.
relationship scam in the making. I mean, this guy.
It was, yeah. They're,
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
Zoom
Wait.
scams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
Fool Me Twice 3.
Sponsored by Zoom. 40-minute maximum.
Quick, there's a great idea. I'm gonna
Sponsored by Zoom.
for all the people that can't pay.
Do you know what's so funny is one of my very good friends who was a fan of your podcast.
Yeah.
I said, you know, what is there any advice what she could talk about? She said, don't joke about the scams.
We're not joking
Tell
about
her,
it.
whoops, sorry.
I was like, I'll try.
No, but that's the thing. If you can't laugh at these things, I mean, laughter is such a cornerstone of being happy and in connecting with people in life. It's fine to laugh at.
I mean,
it doesn't take away the seriousness of it. Do you know what I mean?
I think some of the
it's a
biggest
terrible
laughs
thing.
come from emotionally heavy moments.
Of course they do. That's what we were saying about comedy, when you've got to expose yourself and your deepest, darkest secrets, because that's when you hook the audience in, and then you've got to turn it on its head and make it funny.
Yeah, I mean, Carol Burnett said comedy is equal to tragedy plus time, which is why when Andy bombs on stage, I'm laughing because I'm having a great time.
Because it's just time till Vivek gets on and saves the show.
Then I just go on. People don't laugh. That mic's not working.
Yeah, so tell your friend I was happy to have jokes about scams.
She'll listen.
Yeah.
Um,
Hi there. Thanks for listening to my podcast.
Love you, Cassie. So I am really fascinated, though. Are there any characters that have stood out to you looking back over Hong Kong Confidential that could, you know, be interesting to bring up, represent the city with their story?
Well, that is a brilliant question because there are so many, but ones that pop to mind are Matt Friedman from the Mekong Club about human trafficking. That was absolutely like gripping and incredible. I think that I had a woman called Tammy McLean on my podcast who was caught in the Thailand tsunami, and she shared her survival story. That was amazing. My most listened to podcast is Kate McAllister, episode 50, about how she had a stroke at the age of 32 in Hong Kong. And her survival story. That's my most listened to podcast. My one on menopause is in the top 6 of the most. We had
we're going to have to cancel ours. It's already been done.
Sorry, forget it, guys. We've done it. It's done in Hong Kong. So look, there are so many. I've had so many incredible guests. One of my ex-students came back and he'd written a poem about me because I had helped him manage his depression and get help for him when he was at school. And this is Vishal Nanda, and he'd written a poem about me, and he read it on the podcast, and I started crying. I'm like, you're the only guest that's ever really made me cry, and it was just so moving. There's just been so many. I can't think off the top of my head to name them, but I think there's something about personal stories rather than, oh, I'm in the mindfulness business and this is what I do and I teach meditation and this is how it can help you. Like, I've got loads of great podcasts like that, but I really feel a connection to the personal survival stories, cancer survivor. There's loads of them. And I really love that because I think that that's part of that owning your story and sharing your soul, and that really helps the audience and the listeners, one listener, we'll speak to the one listener, to connect. Yeah.
But have you noticed any common traits that you usually have in your guests? I mean, like, for example, people I like to speak to are the ones who are really productive. You know, they're always chasing a certain dream. And I find that these guys are just, proactive and too overly busy. That's what I seem to attract around me, really busy people.
You're a very busy person.
Yeah, that's probably why.
I am too. Super busy. Look, I think after 150 episodes, you're going to have a really wide variety of people. And I think one of the things in common is that pretty much everyone's in Hong Kong or a part of the Hong Kong community. But I think one of the things that I did when I came up with the format of the show was make sure that there was real breadth in, like, I didn't do a mums and breastfeeding podcast because then you're just limited to babies and breastfeeding.
You're going to struggle to get to 170 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Hong Kong Confidential, I can really do anything that I like. And I'm even like Simon Squibbs in England when I interviewed him, but he was in Hong Kong, so there's a tenuous connection. So I'm sort of branching out a bit and making more tenuous connections. But I just think everybody that I've spoken to, the common factor is they're all willing to share their story. And the thing is, everyone's got a story.
Especially in this city.
Yeah. Everybody.
You can't get here without having a story.
Every day's a new story in the city, man. Every day,
right.
you
God.
always just go on Facebook. You're like, oh my goodness, this is going on now. Yeah, it's always happening.
Well, we were saying today whether we'd be able to come in with the protests and stuff.
Yeah. Well, today should be calm. I mean, yesterday was the big thing with the issues in Hong Kong.
So
Today's another
we
story.
came in yesterday, and I was coming in here, and there are literally downstairs people, riot
pepper
police
bulleting,
running
yeah.
at people, being hit with the rubber bullets or whatever they were.
Pepper. They were doing the pepper one. It was lunchtime, so they were hungry.
People holding
The
up their
cops, you know, I
sandwiches.
mean, they're not going to waste their rubber bullets at lunchtime. I mean, these guys, you know.
You're the one that's out there all the time.
Yeah, that's what I would know. It's before 2. It's going to be pepper bullets.
Yeah, they were looking for Vivek. They were running towards the comedy club. But then I came an hour later and I filmed the same spot. You would never know there was anything there.
That's so Hong Kong, isn't it?
It's the most Hong Kong
20
thing
minutes
ever.
ago, it could be chaos, right? You know, you tear gas, all this stuff. 20 minutes later, everyone's like, so I'll see you at 4.
We got hit with tear gas here inside the lobby of downstairs. And we walked, it was floating all the way through. LKF was full of tear gas. So we walked up to Wyndham Street. You cross the buildings. You're at the other side of Wyndham Street. And there's just expats drinking in the street like nothing was going on.
Surreal.
It was so surreal. It was just like this. You could sort of pan a camera like this. You'd be like, that is a war zone.
Yeah.
And that is a bunch of douchebags.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically like a weird timeline that's happening at the same time, but like 2 parallel universes. I mean, I've been actually on the streets, with the rallies and everything, where you have guys in coffee shops standing at the windows, going like, "What's going on? What's going on outside?" And everyone outside is like running around, passing waters and umbrellas and this and that. And you guys in the coffee shop go like, "I'll have a grande latte, please." Oh, cool. This is live. Interesting.
With the pepper, I got pepper outside.
Yeah, they're right. Like, oh, look, Facebook is 20 seconds delay, so I'm kind of seeing what's going to happen really soon on my phone.
At least you're making Jules laugh.
Brilliant. Yeah. You don't need a full audience. You've got me. Yeah.
So do you feel that COVID has affected, what you've been putting on the podcast or want to put on the podcast?
Yes, it's affected the quality because I've had to do it over Zoom.
Yeah.
Whereas before COVID, I did every single one of my interviews live, face to face.
And also add to that the protests as well. Have they affected what you're trying to do with it or what you're focused on?
No, not really, because that's an area that I'm kind of staying away from because I guess with my job and just
of course,
really touch.
Can't.
And I live on Llama Island, and so I'm away from everything, and I've just still been able to get. I have been inundated with guests over COVID. I have got podcasts recorded up until September.
You're joking?
No,
is that a real thing?
Joking.
Wow.
I promise you. I've got to stop now. Like, I don't want any more Zoom. I don't want any more Zoom podcasting because you can't have the same connection.
Yeah.
Like, it's so lovely to be sitting here with you guys now, doing it live again for the first time in ages. Well, second time because I had one other interview live. And it's such a difference because you can really connect. You can feel the energy. You can really feel the presence. You can read the room. You can look at the body language, all of that. And on Zoom, you lose all of that. So I feel like I haven't done as good a job at connecting with my guests on Zoom. And then you've got the sound quality issue.
It's definitely harder though.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Harder. So I do not want to record. Another reason why I want to stay in Hong Kong.
If your whole
with
thing,
Hong Kong people, I don't want to record overseas.
Yeah. Well, if your whole thing is personal stories, you're going to be like, tell me about the moment that changed you as a person. I'm sorry, the line just dropped out.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that? My internet connection just dropped out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the dogs are barking
they're just
downstairs
sobbing.
and the rain's pounding. And,
Well, I've got kids and I live in a Hong Kong apartment, and I was doing someone's podcast the other day, and my daughter's just going, I'm like, can you hear that? She's like, yeah, really loudly.
I know. I interviewed someone yesterday, and it was a lovely interview, but she had construction noise going in the background, and like I've sent it off to my editors, and it's just like, can you try to take that construction noise out? But it's hard. It's really hard. Like, I really like to be able to control the environment where I'm interviewing. That's what I've realised.
That's why this room's great.
I might be a bit of a control freak in general.
No, I think that's why you're at where you are, because like you would care about these small issues. I mean, like I say, if you listen to a good podcast or even a recording of video, the sound quality is so important, way more important than the visual itself.
If you listen to a lot of podcasts, bad sound quality just drives you insane.
Yeah. Look, some people would argue that the content is more important. Some would argue that the sound quality is important. important. I think you need both.
Oh,
I
definitely.
really
Yeah.
do.
Well, I think one's a minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's like
I agree.
It's sort of one of those things where it's like having enough air. It's like you just got to have it at a standard that we can function normally, and then the content comes in after that.
Look, I've put up a podcast with a guy who worked in the Russian LGBTQ space where he was rescuing guys from
sounds rough.
Chechnya. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was incredible. And he was here for the Rainbow Festival that they had. And I did it in a hotel in TST. The sound was terrible, but it was a really moving, amazing interview.
You make compromises.
So I made it, I gave my listener an apology. Like, you know, I'm really sorry. The sound is terrible, but this is a great podcast with a really important story. And I put it out and it's done really well.
I had a similar thing with a Yemeni guy who was a refugee trapped in his apartment in Wuhan for 70 days or something. I ended up doing 2 of them because people just wanted to get more of the story out of him.
How cool.
It's terrible sound quality, but people will sit through it because it's so engaging.
Yes. So I think if you've got a sort of average story or something that's not really clicking together and the sound quality is not good, then it's a problem. But if you've got great content with crappy sound quality, you might get away with it. Also, your podcast over time can stand for itself, speak for itself.
Sure.
And I think I've got a great audience, that regular listeners and things, and so they'll be more forgiving over time.
I think at this point you've kind of gone against what like the ABC was trying to encourage was don't do a podcast. I think whoever's listening now is probably going to think I want to start doing a podcast.
Yeah, we're the anti-ABC.
Yeah. Forget
Do
the
it,
ABC.
do it.
Yeah.
I mean, so what are the tips you would give to someone who's in their room right now thinking I have a mic, I can do something? Like, are there any beginner tips you would guide and suggest, like, things that you kind of made a mistake in the beginning, what to avoid, just ideas?
I think having a bank of podcasts, like about half a dozen before you launch, is a good idea. I think having a bit of a launch party and a bit of a release and doing some media or social media posts and things beforehand is a great idea. I think getting good equipment to start with. Don't start with a Blue Yeti because it picks up all the noise everywhere.
I'm getting rid of it tomorrow.
I've still got mine.
I'm writing my notes down now.
But I think there's a lot of things that you can do, like get on Facebook groups for podcasters and learn from them and search posts and ask for help. The podcasting community is full of generous people that will help you and support you. Do podcasts. I've got so much I could go on for hours. Do podcast promos and cross promos with other podcasts is a great way to get an audience. One of the best. Do a little short course like I did. There are plenty of courses. There are free courses. Libsyn have all this free stuff. My daughter is doing a podcast writing course for anybody who wants to actually write true crime and actually create a sort of narrative-rich podcast. Do a course. Like, look into what you want to do. And I think really don't go in half-assed and not really have a vision and a plan. I think you need to have a focus and a plan. And you know how we were talking about the sound quality and stuff, like, I really wanted to make sure everything was top notch for Fool Me Twice. I think that's different.
Oh,
to
yeah. I mean, it would suck
interview show.
because
Yeah.
it's such an atmospheric thing to listen to,
Yeah.
right?
Had to be like it's only 3 of us made that, and I think it's a network quality production.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised to hear that only 3 of you made
Yeah,
it. So.
it's 3 of us. That's
Yeah,
it.
'cause
I spent 250 hours editing that podcast, 9 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we're going to get ready for Fool Me Twice too.
Yeah.
That's another 250 hours probably.
Yes, over summer. Yeah. So-
Yeah, it's amazing putting that up against what I'm guessing you spent on Hong Kong Confidential, which is a different level per episode.
No, you know what? When I first started, I used to do all my own editing, and I had to learn, so it took me like 20 hours to edit 1 hour podcast.
Oh my
or
God.
15 hours. I was so pedantic, dropping all the breaths and taking out all the ums and
Oh
the
no,
ahs and the
I don't
stumbles
even listen to it before I put it out.
Oh my God. Okay, well, there's a little tip for you. That's a tip. Edit.
Ah, okay.
No, I'm full anti-editing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah,
We're going for authenticity. That's what we're doing.
I just think sustainability. You know.
But no,
Seriously though, no. If you sit there putting, I was on a Ollie Horn's podcast recently. He said he edited for 10 hours. I'm like, mate, you're not going to be doing this podcast
Yeah.
in a week.
Well, I pay for editing now.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
for
So
that, because And they do it to the quality that I want. And I feel like my listener now wants a certain quality or appreciates a certain quality.
So my listeners have no standards at all.
Yours are
They
rubbish.
expect nothing.
But
Rubbish.
you know what?
They're just rubbish people, really.
But this is a different format. This is more of a chat, a chat show.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's okay.
It's more casual. I mean, our listeners are usually people who are testing speakers. They're just like, let's listen to this. Okay, this speaker's terrible. This headphone's not bad.
You jokingly said we should speak to the one listener. We don't even have that at this point.
We have the guy who has one earphone in,
One
the DJ.
of my listeners might come on board and listen to this.
Not after this point.
He's like, I heard a breath of air. They didn't edit that out.
So I'm really curious though. I get talking about people having their personal story, but I'm very curious about sort of areas or industries of Hong Kong that you were unaware of or unaware of their nuances until you sort of, say you talk to we've got a poker player coming on soon, or again like some aspect of Hong Kong that you didn't really know about.
Yes, I didn't know there was a sleep specialist in Hong Kong, a somnambulant. I can't even say it.
A sommelier?
No.
Somnambulist. Oh, I don't know. Sorry,
Wow.
Kate
Is that how he
Bridle.
gets you to sleep? You just
I
have to
don't know.
say his title.
Hey, it was really
That
helpful.
sounds like a relationship scam right now. I'm a sleep specialist, baby.
I'm a sleep specialist.
Here, put
Anyway.
this cloth on your mouth. You'll be fine. Like, wait a second. Hold on a second. This mattress is great.
It's terrible.
go back.
I apologise for Vivek, ladies and
sorry.
gentlemen.
Again.
It's crossed the line.
So this is the thing
That's
about.
what Cassie's gonna be like. I told you not to joke about it.
Cassie, you were right.
I would like to just acknowledge that the
That is
viewpoints
the
of.
most inappropriate thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, that was terrible. That actually, but notice we're laughing more than anything else. But that was appalling.
I did that.
Also, he's supposed to be the nice guy.
I did that on purpose to show that we don't edit this podcast at all. That's staying in. You see?
Okay.
I sacrificed myself for the authenticity of the show.
Please don't forward me the complaint letters. All right? I do not want to see them.
My apologies. Man. I will put my cloth away. I'll never take it out again.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, it completely set me off. So there was a sleep specialist in there somewhere.
Anyway,
All right,
that's
okay, so-
hilarious.
But he must be saving lives in this city like this, getting people to sleep.
She, Kate Bridle.
Sorry,
Yeah.
gender assumptions, but
Yeah, see, no,
The woman wouldn't be silly enough to do
It's an
that
amazing
job.
podcast. Like, I really recommend to anyone who
Oh, it's a
has problems.
podcast?
Yes, a podcast.
Oh,
so I
wha-
didn't know that there was a sleep specialist, and she came on my podcast, and it was absolutely brilliant. So
it's absolutely
informative.
boring. That's how she gets him to go to sleep.
Yeah.
But everyone nodded off by the end of the
I
podcast.
think our previous few episodes on this podcast is considered as sleep specialist episode.
Yeah.
The listeners are like, yeah,
We're
I'm
sleep
dozing off.
specialists, actually.
Yeah, we are. Sometimes my set is a whole sleep specialist set.
Oh my god, I'm giving you guys so much material.
We had Will Sylvans, who's one of the best comedians on the planet, came here for our opening. And were you here for that? This dude in this chair.
Oh, he
So
was
Will
asleep.
Smith was here.
No,
Will
Will
Sylvans.
Sylvans. Yeah. So there was a guy on
He's
stage
sitting here
left that was
for-
asleep.
He was asleep for 40 minutes during a show that was just 150 people laughing as loud as they could laugh. And he just like, at some point, he was just like,
But do you know what? I know how you feel. I did a Zoom lesson the other day. I'm a school teacher, and one of my kids was asleep on the Zoom like this.
oh, yeah.
She was just asleep on screen for the whole lesson.
I'm-
I'm like, wake up, wake up. Nothing. And then she emails
Was
me
this
the
a
next
one-on-one
day.
class?
No, everyone.
Yeah,
group,
I was going
yeah.
to say, that's better.
I did a Zoom workshop before as well for some schools, and kids in their beds, lying there, having breakfast with their cameras on, and I'm like, you know what? Turn your camera off.
There's
I can't take this.
there's an old guy in our Brisbane office, and they had a full like the head president from the London office and stuff, and the bloke stood up and he had pink hot undies, hot pink undies on, and the guy speaking was going and the CEO from Australia goes, Jeffrey, sit down. Your penis is on the
You're in the
front of
shot.
the camera.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Oh
Brilliant.
man!
Oh.
All right, so you had the sleep specialist on your show. Talk. I mean, that's like as you said, it's a real job.
Yeah.
Is-
I didn't
can you-
know there was one. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but it's great. And there was other things that I've learned about, like the Mekong Club and the human trafficking work that's done in Hong Kong. And
I'm
Planet
glad to hear
Ally
about
and
stuff like that.
Planet Ally and all that LGBTQ work that they're doing in Hong Kong and things like that. There's so many different things that I've learned. It's been incredible. And people that are approaching me just out of the blue, and it's like, I've really learned a lot about what sort of groups there are working for foreign domestic helpers in Hong Kong and the support that they get. And that's been really enlightening.
Yeah, we did an episode on that recently. And some of the stats you don't realise are incredible.
So I've learnt loads. And I went out and did a how not to get scammed online dating workshop with some helpers who are ambassadors at Pathfinders, and then they will disseminate the information out to other helpers in Hong Kong. So it's brilliant. Like these opportunities are coming up, and I'm wanting to pay it forward now. I want to do things out in the community where I can make a difference. I'm doing it for free. And if podcasters contact me and ask me for help, I'm helping them. And I'm not charging. Oh, please don't all call me at once. But don't do a podcast.
You will get one phone call. That's that one lesson.
That I brought on board. Yeah. So... Yeah, there's loads that I've learned, and that's one of the things that's so rewarding about podcasting is that there's the people you meet, the things that you learn, and how inspired you are. It's absolutely brilliant.
Well, there you go. I mean, because you talked about Pathfinders. Well, I worked with them once, and just doing some research about the issues that they had, and it was mind blowing because, let's say the issue of pregnancy. It's like, foreign domestic workers getting pregnant. It's not illegal. They're completely allowed to do it, and it's totally normal. But then now there's another issue, and I was like, wow, I can't believe such a simple thing can become this big issue. We had a whole little kind of workshop talking to people about it, how to deal with this issue, and it was just mind-blowing. And I think that's just one aspect. So you've got 150 episodes talking to more than 150 different people. You must have all these issues that you're like, wow, the world is super complex. There's so much to it, right? Yeah. Everything. You must look at Hong Kong completely different from the general person.
Yeah, I think so. In a way, yes. And then in a way, no, because I'm in my 50s and I've been around the block a few times. So I know sort of what's going on. And I'm a teacher, so I'm sort of aware. But there's still things that surprise you. And there's still things that you can learn. And there's still things about Hong Kong that I'm uncovering. It's really, really interesting. It'd be great to get into the triads and do stuff on that.
Oh, yeah. I interviewed
I haven't done that yet.
I interviewed a Nigerian cocaine dealer in Shanghai who I thought was a former cocaine dealer, and minutes into the podcast realized that he was still working pretty...
Halfway through he's laying stuff out, you're like, no.
Yeah. So is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
I would just like people to go and check out Fool Me Twice on Apple and Spotify and anywhere you get your podcasts, and also to check out Hong Kong Confidential. You can listen to that any episode that takes your fancy. And with Fool Me Twice, start at number 1 and work through to number 10. And to keep your eyes out for Fool Me Twice 2 that's coming in the future. And also my book is on Amazon, Fool Me Twice by Jules Hannaford, if you want to get really into the story. And I've bought you guys a copy, so you can...
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You guys can have a little read and get the inner story.